Hub,
and Spoke. Audio Collective.
Control is new from Commercial Type. Originally drawn for interview by Christian Schwartz and Miguel Reyes, this sans serif is designed for flexibility and can bring tasteful modernism or 70s tight-knot touching exuberance to any layout. See Control and download a free trial version at commercialtype.com.
Hey there, guys. Season 5. You did it. You know, in magazines, we don't call them seasons, we call them volumes. And I don't even know what volume we're working on for Mountain Gazette, but we are working on the 202nd fall 2024 issue of Mountain Gazette. You can learn all about it by going to mountaingazette.com. But you listen to the podcast, I'll get on my Zoom call, mountaingazette.com. Our fall issue starts shipping later this fall. Enjoy the show.
While many printers have shifted their focus, Freeport Press has remained committed to the art of print. For companies that need a printing partner for magazines, look no further than Freeport Press. We offer the capabilities a customer would expect from a national printer while offering the level of customer service clients expect from a family-owned business. Freeport Press. We do print, and we do it well.
freeportpress.com.
So Liz called me up and we had lunch. And we had a lunch for about 2 hours. And we didn't talk one bit about the magazine. We spent about 4 minutes talking about the magazines. And that was at dessert. We talked about so many things, but not about Harper's Bazaar. And she didn't want to bring the subject. I didn't want to bring the subject. It just showed up. And I asked her the question, so what's your plan with Bazaar? She said, I'd love to do the best magazine ever. I said, me too. And she said, great, so we think alike.
This is Print is Dead, Long Live Print, a podcast about magazines and the people who made and make them. I'm Deborah Bishop.
I'm Patrick Mitchell. There are many reasons for you to hate Fabien Baron, especially if you're the jealous type. Here are 7 of them. He's French, which means, among other things, his accent is way sexier than yours. He spent an inordinate amount of time in the company of supermodels like Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, and Kate Moss. He gets all of his Calvin Klein undies for free. Ditto any swag from his other clients, Dior, Louis Vuitton, Burberry, or Armani. When he tired of just designing magazines went and made him their editor-in-chief. He was intimately involved in the making of Madonna's notorious book, Sex. How intimately? We were afraid to ask. Also, Vanity Fair called him the most sought-after creative director in the world. With our pity party concluded, we admit hate was probably the wrong word, because after spending time talking to him, it's easy to see why Baron has been able to live the kind of life many magazine creatives dream of, and why he's been so incredibly successful. His enthusiasm is contagious. It's actually his superpower, and it's a lesson for all of us. When you get next level excited, as Baron does when he can see the possibilities in a project, his passion infects everybody in the room. And then, when you learn that Baron believes he's doing what he was put on this earth to do, and claims that he would do it all for free, you kinda gotta believe him.
I never, ever worried about money. I never took a job because of the money. Because I think integrity is very important. Believing that you have a path and that you're going to follow that path and you're going to stay on that path and that you're going to stick to that. That's what I'm trying to do.
Welcome to Season 5 of Print is Dead, Long Live Print. This is a rare occurrence. We are 3 people all fluent in the language of paste-up. And I hear you were a paste-up machine in your early days.
Yeah, I did glue some paper. Yes, I did.
Are you just as good on the computer?
I think so. I think I'm quite fluent with the computer. Would I be able to do it without the computer today? I think so, because old tricks always come back. But damn, was it slower?
Yeah.
Definitely slower. A lot of options came about when the computer showed up. My first job at Barney's with the computer was the little square box. And I said, I'm not doing that. What's that? Like a black and white screen? I want my big fat Xeroxes and my glue and my baseboards.
I know it well.
You got an early start. You got a boost from Alexander Liberman. He's such a fraught character in the history of magazines. He's a fragile man. He's a powerful man. But he had the
Wow.
ability to create a career as he tried to do with you from the start.
Yes. Even though I didn't follow the route he wanted me to take, I was definitely in the 80s when I showed up in New York, the figure of magazine. If you wanted to make it in magazines, you knew Liberman and you had an access to him and you could go and see him and talk to him, but he could either break you or make you into something. And I got lucky to get an appointment. I was in New York for about a week and I got an appointment with Liberman. I don't know how that appointment came about, but I did get it. And being French, I think he liked that because he spoke French. And I knew about him. I knew how important he was. And I had a great meeting with him. I came in New York. I wanted to stay a couple of months. I wanted to see if there would be options because I was tired of France. I was really young. I was like 20 or 21, something like that. It was in 1982. And I wanted to take a chance at this game of New York. And I got an appointment with him. So it felt, okay, I got to go do this. And I didn't speak English very well. He got that really super quick. Let's speak French. That's going to be easier. And he was very happy to speak French. I think he was a very charming person. He was soft-spoken. And he had a manner in which like he felt extremely European. When I met him, I felt, okay, this is someone from Europe. And I think he had amazing taste and extreme acute knowledge about making magazines.
He wanted you to hop in on Vanity Fair, right?
Yes. He said, I don't know if you heard about this magazine. You probably don't know this magazine because it's a magazine from all times, but we're going to relaunch Vanity Fair. I said, oh, okay. I had no idea what Vanity Fair was, except I remember old things like Vanity Fair. Okay, yes, I've seen that, I think. It was from the 40s or something like that. And he wants to relaunch that magazine. Okay, great. He said, like, the art director is looking for an associate. And I showed my book. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do magazines. I love magazines. And I'd been doing quite good in France by that time. So my portfolio was okay. And there was a lot of redesigns of magazines. So he understood that I was getting things quickly. And he said, okay, go see the art director and come back and see me. So I went to see the art director. It was like a few floors down. And we had a meeting, but a really great meeting. Everything was great. Everything was set. And after I called Alex Liberman, I told him, like, okay, we had a great meeting. I think it's going to work out. He says, call me back in a week and we work it all out. And so I called him back a week after, and he said, there's an issue. We fired the art director. He was working on what they call at the time a zero, like a fake issue. And they fired him during that time. And I said, oh, there goes my chance to work at Vanity Fair and work at Condé Nast. He said, come back to see me, though. And so I went back to see him, go in his office, start talking French, blah, blah, blah. Charming, charming, charming. Said, listen, it didn't work out for Vanity Fair, but I have plans for you. But in the meantime, you're going to go work at Self Magazine. And I go, Self Magazine? That's not my thing. Really? Are you sure? I said, go there for now. So I went there. I worked there with Rochelle Udell for about a little bit less than a year. And then he put me at GQ. He put me at GQ with Mary Shanahan. And I think he was taking people and pushing them on the board like a chessboard. Okay, this guy can go here, this can go. He was smart in the way he was working. And I have to tell you, I've learned so much when I was there during his time, because he would come from magazine to magazine, and I'd already seen him at Self and I'd seen him at GQ. So I knew the way he was doing things, and it was really intriguing at the time, the way people worked. He had an extreme sense of journalism and to push a point of view that was narrative driven. And I like that very much. It was not about what looks good automatically. If you didn't like something, if you didn't like a fashion picture, you would crop the head. You would crop the head. That's it. Crop the head. No problem.
It's interesting that Vanity Fair didn't work out, because we will get to this later, but you have a history of successfully not taking jobs. Before we get to that, Deb, I think you want to dive in here and talk about your past a little bit.
Yes, let's go back in time. You grew up in Paris, my favorite place in the world, and you followed in your father's footsteps into a design career. Can you talk about that and your relationship with your dad and how it's affected your career?
The relationship between a child and his dad can go different ways. In my own way, I think what happened is I was really like looking up to him and wanted to impress him. And so whatever he was doing, I thought he was God. And I wanted to do what he was doing. I think if my dad would have been a film director, I would be a film director. I would have definitely ended up in something artistic, but just so my father was working in magazines. So I had to work in magazines. I had to show him, prove him that I was good doing something that he liked.
Did Paris inspire you in those days?
Absolutely.
It would have been in the 70s. What were you into, and how did that inspire how your design evolved?
I think when I look at my trajectory, I know that when I was a child, I was really intrigued by the past. I was really intrigued by the environment in which I was living. I didn't take anything for granted. And I was extremely curious and observant. Like I would see a monument and I would just contemplate it and try to study it and try to understand, when was that built and what it must have been the life during that time. And when that statue was erected, how was the life around and how people connected to that statue. I asked myself so many questions about the work, what type of stone it is. I was always very curious about the environment and living in an extremely cultural environment. And it was really pure luck that I was in Paris because ultimately I was surrounded by beauty.
Yes.
I was totally surrounded by beauty, surrounded by artworks, surrounded by culture. And so I took it with my own eyes. I mean, that's amazing. The most amazing education. My education is totally basic and normal. And I think everything I've learned by myself, by looking and by being curious. My young years, I'd say I was always going to see every monument. I was always at Notre Dame, in the museum, and in the streets, looking at a door, the way what the wood was sculpted. Everything, all these details that you have around you when you live in Paris. And I was extremely curious about all these things. So I think I ingrained a lot of classical items in my head. So I think in my work, there is this classical aspect that come through. It needs to have elegance because I come from Paris, and elegance and beauty is ingrained in my personal culture. But then I moved to New York really early on. I moved to New York when I was 20 years old. The first time I came to New York, I was 18, and I stayed 6 months, and I got so overwhelmed by it that it was a shock for me because it was totally the opposite of what I had learned. And it was so intriguing that I said, oh my God, this is another ball game. This is totally new thing. And I need to be part of it. I felt that culture was actually, for today, was happening in America. And I felt anything, music, pop culture, art, dance, theater, movies, it was all coming from America. The country was leading all these things. And when actually France and Europe were leading years ago, centuries ago.
But you had the perfect education because you started with France, the pinnacle of style, and then you embraced the American style. So the two of those things put together were a great education. You talk about that you went to school in Paris, but that didn't last too long. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I went to art school, but at the same time, I was working already a little bit with my father. I went to art school for a year and a half and then I quit because I just wanted to work. I felt that I was wasting my time. I was very eager to start working. So when I was 17, I basically quit school and I went on working.
So I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but your first art director job was a New York Woman.
Oh my God, look what you have there.
I remember this magazine coming out, and I remember...
I don't have not even one issue of this.
Oh, I could let you have this for $50. I remember how much excitement there was, and you had Betsy Carter coming from Esquire, which was a great magazine, great tradition of design, coming to launch and create a new women's magazine, and then you were hired as the art director, and I think this created a lot of excitement, but it didn't work out well for you. Can you talk a little bit about how you got there and how it ended?
I got there because Betsy Carter called me up. I was at Condé Nast at GQ, and she called me up to do a magazine, and I took it because I felt GQ was okay, but this was the next thing. It was new. Like in France, I'd learned to work on new magazines. Like my job was early on to redesign magazines, come 1 or 2 issues and leave. So this felt very much like something I would know, like start from a blank page, do a logo. Everything was to be done. I thought that was a good challenge. Liberman was not so happy that I left. But he said to me, it doesn't matter. You need to prove yourself, go out there, but you'll come back.
And so what was the brief at New York Woman?
The brief at New York Woman was to do a magazine that was very much about New York and about New York Woman. The title says it. But I think I went a little bit more international, maybe.
It wasn't really a fashion magazine. It was a lifestyle magazine.
It was a lifestyle magazine.
It was almost literary by comparison to Ed Book and the magazines of that time.
Yeah. It was what it was, but I had my own idea about it. And I was very keen on making that happen. And I think I did, to a certain degree. Liberman told me, if you got out of Condé Nast, you cannot use anyone from Condé Nast. So finish for you to use the photographers that we're using. I said, okay, I'll work it out. So that's how I brought all the European photographers. I brought Peter Lindbergh, I brought Max van der Kool, I brought Jean-François Lepage, Jean-Jacques Cast, like all these photographers that were not working with Condé Nast.
Perfect. Solved the problem.
And that's what I started to say, okay, let's play game with Condé Nast.
That didn't end well necessarily. You and Betsy Carter had different opinions on how that should go, which is fine because you were still figuring yourself out.
Yeah, and also like when I was at New York Woman, I started to get calls for advertising jobs. And I got a call from Barney's to work on the advertising. And this was the occasion for me to work with one of the photographers I always loved, and I still do love him, Steven Meisel. And I couldn't work with him at New York Woman because of the veto. So I said, okay, I want to do advertising so I can work with Meisel. So basically, we started to work together on Barney's and doing ads with Naomi, Christy, Linda, and like the big star models. And at the same time, I was doing advertising. I was doing New York Woman. And I get a phone call, of course, from Mr. Liberman, who said, why don't you come visit? I want to talk to you about an idea. So I go see him and we sit down and he tells me that he would very much like me to take over American Vogue with Grace Mirabella. I was at New York Woman. I said, American Vogue, Grace Mirabella. At the time, it felt like the magazine was tired a little bit. It felt like it was not in a good place and they wanted someone to bring a little bit new blood or to fix it to some degree. But deep down, I really thought about it and I turned it down. I turned it down because I felt like it was the wrong job to take.
Based on what?
Based on the fact that I felt in my guts that Grace Mirabella was not going to stick around very long. And that her approach to magazine at the time was not what I had in mind with a magazine. I've even felt like Betsy Carter was closer to my vision than Grace Mirabella. So I didn't take the job. He was a bit disappointed. I said, I'm going to start New York Woman. I think I have something going. He was seeing it too. And he was seeing like the Peter Lindbergh and all. He was seeing all this. So he probably felt better to bring him back. But I turned it down. And then a week later, this is so strange. What happened with the Vogue thing, it was really strange. A week later, I get a phone call from French Vogue. And they asked me if I would be interested to come back and do the magazine. And I was like, oh, gosh, French Vogue, the way it is at that moment, I didn't feel great about the way French Vogue was. It was not the great moment when Bourdin and Newton and all this photographer was there. I was in a total different place in my head. And the idea of going back to Paris, to me, looked like, okay, I go back to Paris after 4 years, 5 years. Does it look like I failed in America and I need to go back home? So I said no. As well. And I felt okay about it until my girlfriend at the time told me, are you crazy? And a couple of friends told me, like, are you crazy? You said no to Vogue? Are you nuts? And I started to panic. Oh my God, they're right. You know what I mean? Because you go with your guts a little bit. And I said, oh gosh, yeah, I made a big mistake here. This is not good. Like I should have taken the American Vogue, like the French Vogue. I should have taken something and everything.
We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jeremy Leslie at Mag Culture. We're proud to support the Print is Dead podcast because we love magazines too. Visit magculture.com and see why print is far from over. It's just getting started. Read the journal for interviews and reviews, listen to our podcasts, visit our shop in London and online, and come to our live events in London and New York. We love magazines. Subscribe to our newsletter for weekly updates, all at magculture.com.
You were very young, very early in your career, very young to be so sure about making those kind of decisions.
I think it was great. You were very courageous to say no.
It was the right thing to do, because if I would have gone there, I probably would have gone like a candle, like poof, because they would have killed me.
Squashed you.
Yeah, squashed me, like totally. It was not the right thing to do. I wanted to work with someone that understood what I was about, and that I would understand as well, and get a perfect mix. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from Franca Sozzani, Italian Vogue. She says to me, "Oh, I've seen you work. You're doing it with Steven Meisel. I already worked with him. Guess what? I really like what you do. I'm going to take over Italian Vogue. Would you like to do it?" I didn't even think. I went, of course I want to do it. Because I was looking up to Franca as well. Franca was the editor to me in Europe, because she was doing Les and Per Louis. And the way she was working with the photographers was very similar to the way I was. She was working with Peter Lindbergh. She was working with Max Medical. She was working with the photographers I was using. She was working with myself. And she had a vision that was very close to what I felt was mine. And she felt like she was part of the same team. So when she called me, I didn't even think. It was yes, of course, no doubt.
What's interesting about her and those days, so obviously these are the days of you and Neville Brody and Vaughn Oliver and David Carson and this whole sort of new wave of design. And I'm a graphic designer. I love design. I don't necessarily have any passion for fashion. And, I look at Vogue and these other magazines, and they're absolutely just devoid of graphic design. And that was the thing about your Italian Vogue. Typography started showing up. You could see it right on the cover, and it was so unusual. And she worked with Brody at those magazines you mentioned, Louis and Perry.
Oh, really?
He was working for her in the 80s.
Oh, yes, that's right. I think you're right.
So she seems like a person who cares about graphic design.
No, the thing is, like, at the time, to be honest, like, between certain photographers, editors, and graphic designers, and fashion people, there were a wave of people that were on the same wavelength. And they were thinking the same, and there was a collective in a way, and I felt I was part of these people, and I ended up working with them.
And so you made an assessment about Franca because you had seen this work.
Oh, because I had seen Les and Per Louis. I knew what she was about. I knew we were talking the same language. And if there was one editor I wanted to work with, was Franca Sozzani. But she calls me when she's starting the Italian Vogue. And I said, you must be kidding. What luck or what vision in my head that I can say no to American Vogue, no to French Vogue, and then get Italian Vogue, which was the magazine to get.
Was this a launch? Were you at the beginning of Italian Vogue?
Yes, first issue. We came in together, and it was fantastic. It was such an amazing feeling to be part of that moment. It was historic in a way. Her coming in and starting this legacy of Steven Meisel work. I did 2 years with her, and that was great. That was fabulous.
Can I just ask you why, in your opinion, do you think that fashion magazines seem to care so little about graphic design, typography?
They don't think it's important. They don't think it's part of the message. It's not important.
I think that they have a problem with style. I find that a lot of American editors don't want anything that's going to distract their stories. They understand photography, but not typography. Do you agree with that?
Yes and no. Yes and no, because I think a lot of designers, a lot of graphic designers want to make a statement with the graphics, and it goes far beyond the words and actually do alter the words in a way that is negative for the meaning. I think like when I started to do single words and things like that on the page, first of all, it was with subject matter that is quite not so serious, right? It's fashion. And the fashion is an easier, in terms of the wording of fashion, like you can say things really quickly with just like single words. You can have a true meaning about something with single word. Fashion use a lot of symbolism in the clothes, in the way they do things. There's a lot of hidden meanings in, or like extra things that you catch out of colors, out of shapes, out of silhouettes. It gives you another emotion, right? And I took on that in terms for the graphic design. I took on this idea that I can shape the words in certain ways that it adds a meaning to the words. It completes its meaning rather than its narrative, like its definition. So the way I started to design with words that were complementing the image, that were mirroring the image. Like the photo and the graphics were meaning something on their own. The photo was meaning something on their own. The word itself, what it meant, or the sentence meant something that was really proper meaning. And then they were like a sub-meaning, like by blowing up certain words bigger. Because in the sentence, you have to enjoy words to do it that way. A lot of people, what I've taken on my design, and I've seen it, but they put something for no reason, or they put something bigger. Why they put that word bigger? When I put a word that is bigger or in color or something, it's because the word tells me to do that. And the meaning of the word tells me. So actually, I'm sometimes reinforcing the point of the editor rather than diminish the point for just pure beauty. And it's something that some editors have difficulty understanding. Ingrid Sishi had obviously issues understanding that in the work when I was with her at Interview magazine. But Franca did not. And some of the editors in Italy, when we did the Italian Vogue, they really thought it was brilliant because it was a new way of communicating quicker about a subject matter that is a light subject matter anyway, from the beginning. And they felt it was more playful and more interesting and visually striking and making the magazine more a thing to look at, because fashion you look at. So I'm extremely intrigued by the photography. For me, the graphics is one thing, but if there's no photography, the graphic doesn't interest me so much.
You like the reaction.
I never did any typography for the sake of typography.
Well, let's skip ahead to Interview.
Yeah, let's talk about Interview. It was so innovative and cutting edge. I think you really hit your stride there. Let's talk about that.
After 2 years of being at the Italian Vogue, we were doing everything manually, no computer, no emails, no nothing. The best thing you could have is a fax. So basically, I was 2 weeks in New York, and I would do all the shoots with Mizell and the other photographers that were in America, and there were a lot. I was in charge of making sure all the shoots were happening. And then I would get the prints and I would get all the stuff, take the box, go on the plane and go to Italy and then open the box and show all the work to everyone. And it was really charming because all the editors would go run, say, okay, let's look at the Bruce Weber, let's look at the Steven Meisel, let's look at this. And I would open and show the pictures. And then right away, we had to go into layout stages and writing and everything. And everything was done with the Xerox machine. Everything was done with the Xerox machine, including those beginning of like me using single letter openings and everything. I was actually Xeroxing the pictures. Then to make it really black, I would go pencil it in black afterwards. And I would cut the letters with a knife to get the things as thin as I wanted them to be. Because at the time, everything was done in photogravure, right? So you had to order you type to a house and it would come back as a piece of artwork that would be blurry on the edge and things like this. So I was cutting with my knife for the letters so it would be perfect with a ruler and peeling pieces off to make the letter perfect and thin and the way I liked it.
It's a very artistic process.
It was very manual. And then you glue it and that becomes a document. Then you retake a Xerox, that becomes your page. And then you glue things and you start doing layouts, gluing, Xeroxing, gluing. Like 2 weeks of that, 2 weeks of shoots. After 2 years, it was exhausting. I couldn't do it anymore. The flying, at the time, of course they didn't have any money. So I was flying tourist class in the back of the plane. It was tough. It was tiring. And I had a life in New York. I still had my clients in New York. I still was doing Barney's and starting to get other advertising campaigns like Valentino and started working with Giorgio Armani.
So you never had any problems with doing the extracurricular. You could always be the art director of a magazine, but do your side projects.
I never did just one thing. I just don't like it. I don't like it because when I do one thing, I give it so much attention. I put so much into it that I don't think about the other thing. And it sucks so much energy. I need to get out of it, put it on the side, not think about it, and go do something else. Oh, that's more fun. So I've maybe very short attention span.
So early on, you were designing very much as an artist, where it was almost a very crafty kind of deconstructed look. And now we've evolved into the computer. What were the main differences there? Were there things that you miss? What do you embrace about the computer?
I think, number one, the biggest thing is once I knew how to use it in a better way, possibilities, things you could do that you couldn't do before. Second, great accidents, right? Try to rethink from that time. And third, speed, right? You could try more than one thing. You could really explore in a different way.
And color. Color was another thing.
Color was very important, yes. I started doing layouts with the pencil. Draw everything. The text was just like a line that's a column. It starts here, it finishes here. And it's a gray box. So you have to just imagine everything. And the same for the titles, everything. I used to draw each letter. Or the title's going to take that space. It's going to be on 2 columns and it's going to be like that.
Did you write your own headlines because you wanted certain sets of letters to work with?
Oh, yes. I wrote a lot of headlines. Not because I wanted certain letters, but because the way I felt when I was seeing the pictures. And in many ways, sometimes the thing I found the most difficult with editors is them say, oh, just put anything there. Just put dummy type. Put like fake type. I said, I can't put fake type. I need to have the word. It needs to be the real word. How am I supposed to design if it's a word that is 7 letters or a word that is 2? It's a totally different approach.
Oh, my God.
You're pressing our buttons here.
It's a good one because you know what? If the words are good, the words are good.
The words inspire the design.
Absolutely. It's got to come from the words. The words and their meaning and how they stand together and what they do. And if you can design helping the words feel better and be bigger and more important and give more meaning to these words, it's good. That's what I call good design.
Bad headlines are the worst thing.
No headlines until the last second are the worst thing. Okay, well, you've talked about finding the right editor is everything. And how do you go about doing that? I guess it's a matter of just saying no.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I refused jobs because I knew the chemistry wouldn't work.
Just based on conversation?
Just based on conversation.
So you can size up an editor very quickly and know whether this is going to work out for you.
Yeah, pretty much. The business of fashion is not that big. You know who are the editors. You know what they do. You know who they work with. And you know what their style is. No, I'll never work with that person because it's not right for me and it's not right for them. It's on both sides.
It seems like you've never worried about money or security. Like you're 100% driven by the creative opportunity.
I never, ever worried about money. I never took a job because of the money.
Is that something you credit your childhood, your parents, your work ethic with?
No, I credit myself for that because I think integrity is very important. I think like believing that you have a path and that you're going to follow that path and you're going to stay on that path and that you're going to stick to that. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to stick with what I believe and I don't want to change the way I believe.
Yeah, I think that you've been able to keep the caliber of your work very consistent by holding on to that integrity. But I want to ask you, how do you deal with editors and clients? Do you feel like you're a good salesman or is it charisma?
Oh, yeah.
Power of persuasion. This is what I wish that I had. I'm not so good at it.
I don't know, but okay, I think I'm quite positive and I get really excited. And when I'm excited, I just go. I just say what I think and I'm very honest and very direct. If there's bad things, I say it. If there's good things, I say it. But it's always bigger than it is. So I guess that's pleasant and that's different maybe from other people. But I get very excited when there's a photographer that has a great picture. I'm the first one to go nuts about it, go crazy. And the same, like when the client is showing me their idea and what they want to do, I get excited. And when I don't get excited, I don't get the job and I don't want the job.
That's a lesson, I think, for everyone to hear, is that you're passionate about what you do.
I'm so passionate about what I do.
But you also have a little bit of French in you, which I think helps.
Maybe like with the accent.
Just a little bit.
But I work in France, let me tell you. Most of my clients are French, so I speak English.
There's a psychology, though, to your enthusiasm because it makes people feel better about themselves and more confident in making the decisions that you want them to make, right?
Yes, you're right.
We'll be right back.
Print is Dead is made possible by the support of the Society of Publication Designers. The SPD powers the future of visual storytelling, setting the standard for editorial excellence and shaping the future of visual culture. For more information, visit spd.org.
So let's move on to 1992. You became the creative director at Harper's Bazaar, which was effectively a launch. Anna Wintour had been at Vogue for a couple of years, and Vogue had been really rising. Bazaar had been really sinking. And this may be one of the most perfect relationships to ever happen in the magazine business. You're working with Liz Tilberis, who sadly had a very short run at Harper's Bazaar. She sounds, based on our conversation so far, your perfect editor because she really just lets you go. She had 100% faith in you. She was quoted as saying that it was you more than her who knew what that magazine should be. Can you talk a little bit about the relaunch of Harper's Bazaar?
I didn't know about that quote from Liz. That's interesting.
She was giving a talk at the American Society of Magazine Editors. She said you were the new Alexei Brodovich.
Wow, that's a big compliment.
So talk a little bit about how you and Liz came together.
It actually came through Patrick de Marchelier, who had a conversation with her about doing Harper's Bazaar. They were like plotting against Condé Nast for Patrick to leave Vogue to go to Bazaar. And Patrick said to Liz, you need a good art director because if you don't have a good art director, there's no point. And so Liz called me up and we had lunch. And what was interesting with Liz is we had a lunch for about 2 hours and we didn't talk one bit about the magazine. We spent about 4 minutes talking about the magazines. And that was at dessert. We were talking about kids. We were talking about New York. We were talking about tons of things about life. We talked about photographers. We talked about fashion. We talked about so many things, but not about Harper's Bazaar. And she didn't want to bring the subject. I didn't want to bring the subject matter. It just showed up. And ask her the question, so what's your plan? What's your plan with Bazaar? She said, I'd love to do the best magazine ever. I said, me too. She said, great. So we think alike.
Let's do it.
That was it. I promise you that was it. And the minute I met her, I knew we were going to work together. So we didn't talk about it. It was really strange. I felt like I knew her forever.
Where were you in your career? Where were you when you were having this conversation?
I had left Interview and I had my own studio and I was just finishing the Madonna sex book. Yes, working on it.
Yeah, and everybody was talking about that.
Yes.
So Liz Tilberis did work for Vogue at one point. I think people thought she would... Was she the editor of British Vogue?
Yes, she was the editor of British Vogue.
And I think she was thought about as maybe a future editor of American Vogue. But Hearst steals her away. You create this phenomenon. It's one of the biggest sort of relaunches in magazine history. It's all over everywhere. It's right at the sort of peak of the supermodels, Christy and Naomi.
It's at the peak of many things. It's the peak of the model industry. It was the peak of fashion and actually at the start of a new fashion era with the grunge and the 90s. It was the moment where magazines were shifting from being a good business into an excellent business, where the brands were putting so many pages of advertising into the magazines. So it was, I think, at the top of the wave. It happened at the top of the wave. There you have your surfboard, you're at the top of the biggest wave, and okay, you're going to ride the wave or no. That's the way it was. And Bazaar felt like that, like when you're on the top of a huge wave and you're going to go surfing this wave or no, and you're going to fall or no. Because the fall is going to be hard, but if you make the wave, my God, that's a good feeling. And I think we did ride the wave. We did ride the wave. The best photographers were working for us.
Are you a sports fan?
Yes.
It seemed almost like a sporting match, this Vogue Bazaar thing.
Oh, yes, it was.
Yeah, in-house, was it as sort of urgent?
It was extremely competitive. And it was a fight. It was like a boxing match.
Did you paste pictures of Anna Wintour on the bathroom mirror?
We didn't have to do that.
Target practice.
We didn't have to do that. The magazine was doing the job.
Yeah.
When the issue was coming out, it was doing the work.
And so you would get the new Vogue and you'd get the new Bazaar and you'd sit down and say, we crush.
Page per page. And they were doing the same. I know they were doing the same because Liz Tilbury was really good friend with Grace Coddington. And so we were hearing from Grace, we were hearing from people at Vogue. The gossip was genius. It was really interesting. It was fun.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Did you explicitly see things that Vogue was doing as a response to what you were doing?
Yes, of course. Yes, definitely.
You each had exclusive rights to photographers of your own. What about models?
Models, everybody was told like you can work for. And we were more flexible, but they were not flexible. But the models, they took the risk. Like Linda, I remember, she said, I don't care. They were told not to do the cover. And Linda said, I don't care, I'm going to do the cover. And she was on the first cover. And aren't you glad, looking back, isn't it great that she did that cover?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you see her documentary?
No, I didn't, actually.
It's really good. It really took you back to the 90s.
Yeah.
So who was your counterpart at Vogue?
It was Anna, I think, for me.
Who was the creative director? Charles Churchward?
Maybe. See, to me, the graphic design and all that was not important. What was important is the whole magazine.
It was more of a creative direction.
Yeah, I think it's the whole creative entirety that was, to me, the important thing.
And I think Anna was so much more of a creative director or editorial director. And that was your role, essentially, too.
Yeah.
I don't know who was the art director. I know at one point Raoul was the art director, but I don't know if I was still at Bazaar when he was there.
Raul Martinez?
Raul Martinez, yeah.
Yeah. Not too long after you started, Liz got sick.
Yes.
You had a, good 4 or 5 year run, and then things sad.
Yes. I think altogether we did 8 years or 7 when she died. And the minute she died, I left. I did the tribute issue for her, the white issue, like in celebration, because we called her La Blanche, because she had white hair, which was very unique at the time. And it's funny because when she had cancer, her hair regrew, but it was gray. It was a beautiful gray. So we said, should we change your name for La Grise? But we said, we keep on calling you La Blanche. I wanted to do this white issue in celebration to her. And I've closed on that issue and I left.
Which makes sense because everything you've said talks about how it was not a relationship with Hearst. It was a relationship with Liz Tilbury.
To me, she was the magazine and there was no point to stay. And I just didn't like the whole thing. Like everybody was like, so what's going to happen? Who's coming in? Who's not coming in? Blah, blah, blah. I didn't want to be part of all this. I said, I have plenty of things to do. I'm not worried. I'm just leaving. I sent my letter and I felt I was working for Liz and I want to leave working for Liz.
Just a side question. Did you know Terry McDonald?
I think I met him once or twice.
He was the editor of Esquire when you were there. They were very close friends, and he wrote this really great tribute to her.
Yes. I think they were very close friends. Yes, you're right.
We're going to ask you what your favorite inspirations were from magazines as a kid, but I think just in general, what inspires you?
I get inspired by everything. To be honest, I'm looking at a lot of art. I get really inspired by artworks and by what people do that are unusual and different. And I'm really intrigued by things I haven't seen before. I think it's my curious side. Like I can help myself. Oh, what's that? How they do that? How they make it? So I'm very curious in the way things are made and how things are put together and how like their gymnastic in their mind, how they get to a place and how they achieve to build whatever they have in their mind as an object.
We are very inspired by nature.
I've always been inspired by nature and I love nature and I spend a lot of time in nature and I dedicated many years of my life taking pictures of nature. All along, this is my career and the work that I've done for years that everyone is aware of. But there's another side, there's the other job, what I call the other side of the coin, that is all the work that I've done for me, personal photography, drawings, that I've been collecting for years, never wanted to share. And I come to a point in my life now that I'm starting to do that. I'm going to start to do that. I'm going to start to have shows. I want to start to show the work.
That's wonderful.
But I put as much effort that I put in my career into this. So there's a tremendous amount of work that a lot of people haven't seen. Apart maybe from a few at my office. And we're putting a lot of prints together at the moment. I've done tremendous amount of landscapes for years. Series, like specific series of work that, are on the repeat and the long-term commitments, and the minute I have time, that's what I do. I like to do something. I don't like to sit and do nothing. I need to occupy myself and to create. I like to create.
Can you name maybe 5 magazines? We occasionally ask this question. Current or historic that you just really know hit the mark? Could be writing, packaging, attitude, voice, photography.
I always admired the New Yorker, and I still do admire the New Yorker, how they were able to go through this wave of the magazine debacle, what you guys call the underprint. I think they were able to sustain the decline because I think for magazines, the literacy is what counts at the end. The narrative is the storytelling, the opinion taking that's at the end comes through. They were smart in not believing in advertising, but believing in subscriptions and high-level subscription. So the magazine is healthy. Their magazine is healthy, which is good. And I like when they said, okay, we're a magazine of words, but when they decided to go visual, they took Vuitton. And to me, that is a beautiful move. So that's that. The New Yorker, I really appreciate. Remember, Egoist is a magazine I always thought was interesting, intelligent, very well done. Again, didn't believe in advertising, and they did their own campaigns. For whomever they were shooting, they were adding the logo, but it was editorially based advertising. And they came up with some ideas, like so much better than the regular campaigns. And it's funny that also they have Vuitton in it. That's funny. Then Esquire, at one point, I thought like was really on it. Probably the time where I was looking at Esquire that I really thought was amazing were like in late 70s, early 80s. I thought that was very powerful. And I remember when Jean-Paul Goude was there and he was doing amazing covers. I think magazines were great before. Now they have to compete with the internet. My magazine is dead, to be honest. I don't look at magazines. In a way, it is very strange. You're talking to someone that loves magazine, that build magazine, that I think done a lot of good magazines. But you know what? I never pick up a magazine. It is almost like saying, oh, look, this film director, very famous, done great films, got everything. But guess what? He's not looking at the movies. It's sad, isn't it?
It is.
But it is a little bit like this. I look at magazines on Instagram. That's where you see the magazine work.
So we want to wrap up with a couple things. You've left magazines now for a few years. You've done a ton of branding and advertising throughout your whole life. I always felt like magazines were a unique animal. You're part of a community. You're speaking directly to that specific group. You're part of a universe. Do you miss that at all? Do you feel the same sort of engagement with other work you've done?
Yes, I don't miss it. I don't miss it. Like I said, I was in magazine because my dad was in magazines. Now I'm into films. And if my dad would have been the director, I probably would be a director. And I am a director now. I direct a lot of films. And I do other things. I'm very busy doing a lot of different things. What I like is to be busy, to be participant in this life in a way that you're adding to the program. I think it's important. I feel like I'm around because I need to put a little something somewhere and leave a mark. And I'm intending to do that. And that it is with the magazine, that it is with the fashion film, that it is with a picture, that it is with my own artwork. Whatever it is, I don't care. Because at the end, it's the intention of wanting to create that is important. The idea of telling the story in whichever way. Maybe I should start writing or something. I don't know. But to me, you have ideas, you have beliefs, and the magazine, the photography, whichever tool you use, it's just a tool. And you need to learn how to use the tool. And that's possible to learn how to use tools. And what you have to express is what is important to me. And at the end, I'm trying to express myself.
For more on this and all of our episodes, visit our website where, in addition to complete transcripts of all our interviews, along with portfolios, archival photos, links, and other great information on our guests, you'll find our blog, Entry Points, about all things magazine, and our ever-expanding swag shop with all kinds of great custom merch. You can also support the podcast by clicking the adorable yellow button at the top of the page, all available at magazium.co.
Print is Dead, Long Live Print is a member of the Hub and Spoke Audio Collective, a nonprofit association of audio storytellers dedicated to promoting and sustaining high-quality, independent podcasting. Learn more at hubspokeaudio.org.
Magazium is made possible by the generous support of listeners like you. If you love our shows and can't wait for new episodes, or even if you just listen from time to time and love knowing we're here, please consider making a donation to help keep us going. Visit magazium.co/support.
Print is Dead, Long Live Print is a production of Magazium, LLC. For more information, visit our website, magazium.co, or follow us on social media at magazium.co. Please give us a like and a review on your favorite podcast app. It really helps. Thanks very much for listening.